Greetings and salutations all, I.S. Anderson here once again, and today I'm actually going to do my very first book tag. Yes, this is a book tag that I created myself. Now, as many of you know, Rick Riordan's series, The Heroes of Olympus, will be ending next month, pretty soon actually, when The Blood of Olympus comes out in October. Looking forward to that, but that's not the reason for this tag. The reason for this tag is his new series. He is actually basing a new series on Norse mythology. This new series is going to be called Magnus Chase and the Gods of Asgard. Yes. And in case you're wondering, that name Magnus Chase, it might sound a little bit familiar to you. Might have the same last name as a certain daughter of Athena in his other series. Yes, so is Magnus related to Annabeth? Maybe, maybe not. Those of you who have read Percy Jackson and have also read the Kane Chronicles know that those two worlds do interact, so it is quite possible Rick Riordan's new series will also take place in the same world as those other two series. So we're just looking forward to that. I decided to do this book tag as a way to get us familiar with the Gods of Asgard, since I am the mythology guy, so I figured maybe I should lead the charge. Maybe let everybody get sort of familiar with the Gods of Asgard so we don't go into this series cold. I think it'll make the reading experience a lot better when we do read this series, for those of us who do decide to read this series. So without further ado, let me present to you the Gods of Asgard book tag. So we start with the Allfather himself, Odin. Yes, Odin was the king of the Asgardians, and he was very devout to gaining knowledge and wisdom. He did, that is actually how he lost his eye. He sacrificed it in order for the ability to get a glance into the future, and that's where he sees Ragnarok, and that's how he knows a lot of that's going to happen. And he also hung himself from a tree for a while to gain enlightenment. Yes, so he is really dedicated to learning. And like I said once before, it's too bad he didn't just have the internet back then. He could have saved himself a lot of pain. But anyway, for Odin, we need to choose a character that exudes wisdom, has a very wise persona about him or her. And so for this character, I chose Atticus Finch from the To Kill a Mockingbird series. Yes, and Atticus Finch, he's a person who's ahead of his time. And he could go through a lot of pain. I mean, he doesn't, but he's in danger of going through a lot of pain for his knowledge and his wisdom and his knowledge beyond his years. And he tries to defend a black man who's accused of rape. It doesn't get him off, but he does show bravery. But he is a very wise person, and he does know that even though he loses, humanity will gain from his actions in the long run. So my Odin is Atticus Finch. Thor, the God of Thunder, the one who's featured in all those movies and the comic books. And he's featured there for a specific reason. Every time something bad happened, every time the Asgardian gods, they found themselves in a bad situation, every time a giant attacked, they always depended on Thor to get them out of the situation. Yes. I mean, even if a giant was literally inside their hall, causing havoc, all the Asgardian gods, they would not do a thing. They would only, their solution was, get Thor. So for Thor, we need to choose a character who the story just cannot move on without. Yes, without this person, the plot would remain completely stagnant and would not go anywhere. Or just maybe a character that everybody else in the book just expects to do everything. So for this one, I actually chose Thomas from the Maze Runner series. Yes. Now, you could sort of make the argument that, well, I mean, doesn't every protagonist kind of move the story along? Well, no, not really, not necessarily. I mean, in a lot of books, I mean, other characters do things to move the plot along. Sometimes the protagonist just reacts to what's going on. But in the case of the Maze Runner, I mean, Thomas, I mean, nothing would go on without him. I mean, that whole situation starts because of him. I mean, they don't start to move forward with trying to actually get out of the maze until Thomas arrives. Thomas is the one who, through his actions, the plot moves forward. I'm not going to go too much into it. Those of you who have actually read The Maze Runner, you know what I'm talking about. But it is clear that without Thomas, nothing in that story would ever happen. Freya was the goddess of women and a fertility goddess, and she was also the goddess of, she was also the queen of the Valkyries. Yes, she led them, and she actually got half the people who died in battle. She took the prettier half and took them up to her hall, while all the rest of the warriors that died in battle went to Valhalla. And for more, I do have another video that's dedicated strictly to her. You can watch that if you want to learn more about her. But basically, for Freya, we need to choose a character that exudes beauty or sexuality. Yes, plenty of different options to choose from. My choice for Freya will be Ariana Martell from the Song of Ice and Fire series. And she certainly is a beautiful character. I mean, when everybody else who sees her, they comment on how beautiful she is. And some people criticize, well, she's too over-sexualized. What's the point of her being over-sexualized? And I think that there actually will be a point to that later on. It has to do with a certain prophecy Circe knows of. Those of you who, was regular of that series might know what I'm talking about. But basically, Ariana Martell, she, to me, is the person that, or at least one of the person in the Song of Ice and Fire series that most exudes femininity, sexuality, and beauty. So I'm going to choose her as Freya. Yes, Loki, the god of mischief, the guy who got the Asgardian guards into more trouble than anybody else in that whole pantheon. Yes. Loki, he had sort of a Cersei Lannister complex, meaning he was clever, but not anywhere near as clever as he thought. He was the kind of guy who, when something would happen, he would say, oh, don't worry, I'll figure out a way out of this. And then he, almost figures a way out of it, but there's always one thing that he doesn't account for. And then the situation becomes apparently a lot worse, and then eventually Thor has to step in and kill somebody. So that's why the Asgardians pick on Loki a lot, and that's why he's a very despised character. And eventually he brings about Ragnarok, but that's a story for a different time. But anyway, for Loki, we need to choose a character who either you feel is despised too much and should be given a break, or a character who everybody gives a free pass and you think should be despised a lot more. For this one, I choose somebody who a lot of people say a lot of good things about, but I personally think he should be despised a lot more than he is. I choose Severus Snape from the Harry Potter series, yes. And the reason I choose Severus Snape is, he is essentially, he is really a jerk. Yes, I understand that he does come through in the end, and he is brave, and, he faces Voldemort. But that doesn't change the fact that he is still an asshole. Dumbledore, one of my favorite lines from Dumbledore is during one of the prince's flashbacks, and Dumbledore says to him, oh yes, you claim to love her, and yet you would gladly put her through the pain of watching her husband and her son die. You disgust me. Plus, the way he picks on Harry when all the other professors like him, but he's just, cruel and mean to him without reason. And, he favors his other students. He's a jerk. He is a well-written character. He is the most complicated character and probably the most three-dimensional. There's Severus Snape, and then pretty much everybody else in that story is divided up into good people and Death Eaters. And so, yes, he is very strong as a character, but as a moral person, I think he's despised. Joffrey, he's a well-written character, but everybody knows that he's a jerk, he's an asshole, and everybody despises him. But with Severus Snape, everybody's just like, oh, I know he was a good guy all along. No, you didn't. You just turned out to be a good guy. But yes, Severus Snape, he is my Loki. Now, Frigg, or Frigga, there's all these gods have, many different names, but she's primarily known as Frigg or Frigga. But anyway, she was the queen of the Asgard. She was Odin's wife, and she happened to be the mother of his son Balder. Not all of his sons and children, but of Balder specifically. And she loved her son very much, and she was very protective of him. She saw foreseen him dying, and so what she did was She went around to every inanimate object in the world and made them all swear to not harm him. Yes. She basically made all wood in the world, all the steel, all the stone, and everything in the world promise not to hurt him. And they all agreed to her terms. And so the Asgardian gods, they would just take their swords or their mallets or whatever, arrows, and they would shoot them at him, and they would reflect off. And all the gods, they were all having a great time doing this, and Baldur was just like, yeah, I'm indestructible. See, the problem was Frigga, she kind of skipped over mistletoe. Yeah, she didn't say, well, mistletoe, that's no big deal. What can that do to him? Not realizing that it was poisonous, and so, yeah. Eventually, like a long story short, eventually somebody hit him with a dart that was coated with mistletoe's poison, and Baldur got poisoned, and he died. So, and then there was also a attempt for Frigga to resurrect him, and that got screwed up, but that's, I'll do another video on that sometime, but basically, for Frigga, you need to choose a mother or a parental figure who is tragic. Either lose their child despite their best efforts, or just don't have any clue how to raise their children, and So for that, for Frigga, I chose Cersei Lannister from the Song of Ice and Fire. Yes, here I go picking on Cersei again. But for those of you who don't know, I mean, Cersei, she gets a prophecy in her early childhood that that all of her children are going to die before her. And so far in the series, I mean, okay, this is kind of a spoiler for those of you who haven't read the books or the movie or seen the show. But yes, one of her children does die, and it's predicted that the other two will die eventually, despite all of her best efforts. So, yes, Cersei Lannister to me is a tragic mother or parental figure. So she's my Frigga. Tyr is the Asgardian god of war, and his most noteworthy thing that he ever does was he actually sacrificed his own hand to the Fenris wolf. Now, I have made a video about this before, so you can check out my video on the Fenris wolf if you want to get a better idea of what happened there. But basically, the Fenris wolf, he's too big, and the Asgardians, they say, well, we need to capture him, and they make a bet with him, see if he can break this chain. He breaks out of it, and then they try a second chain, and that, he breaks out of that too. And then, they have dwarves construct a ribbon out of certain things, and they say, okay, try to break out of this ribbon. And the Fenris wolf says, okay, look, I'll only do this if one of you agrees to put your hand inside my mouth in case you don't let me go. And all the Asgardians are kind of, uh-oh, what are we going to do? And Tyr says, oh yeah, no problem, I'll put my hand in there. Yeah, he puts his hand in there. And, they tie him up, they don't let him go, and, Wolf just says, I gotta bite your hand off now. He goes, I know, and, jump. So Tyr, basically he sacrifices his hand, he goes into this knowing that he has to sacrifice his hand, but he still does it for the greater good. So, for Tyr, we need to choose a character who makes a great sacrifice. So, for this, I chose Luke Castellan from the Percy Jackson and the Olympian series. The first one Percy Jackson was in. I'm not going to get into it, what exactly happens. Those of you who have read the stories, you know what I'm talking about. But Luke, he does make a big sacrifice, very detrimental to himself, and he does it for the greater good. And he spends, most of the story as the bad guy. So, kudos to him for making that final sacrifice. So, Luke Castellan is my Tyr. Hela was the queen of the realm of Niflheim, and Niflheim is the realm of the dead. It's the Asgardian underworld, and she was also Loki's third daughter. She died at birth, and therefore she became queen of Niflheim. So, now for Hela, we need to choose a character that is mysterious and kind of creepy, but not necessarily evil, because I mean, Hela, every time you see pictures of her, there's pictures of her basically half alive, half dead, split down the middle. It's kind of like Two-Face over the whole body and skeletal rather than just burnt. And, she was pretty strict. She never let anybody out of the underworld, but then again, who ever does? So we want to choose a person that's kind of creepy and mysterious, but not necessarily evil. Now, for that person, my Hela is Octavius from the Heroes of Olympus series. Yes, Octavius, he is definitely a jerk. He definitely does some weird stuff. I mean, he sacrifices teddy bears. Okay, and then when Percy gets branded and burnt, he just looks at it and says, "I hope that hurt." And so he's definitely definitely a creepy person. The jury's still kind of out on whether or not he's actually evil. But yes, there's definitely something about him that gives everybody an uneasy feeling about him. And he is definitely one of those people that you really don't want to have to spend 5 minutes alone with. So my Hela is Octavius from the Heroes of Olympus series. Heimdall was the guardian of the Asgardians. He was the person on the Rainbow Bridge that always kept a lookout and was able to look over all the realms at once. Yes, his sight was definitely, it was actually that good. He was able to see everything always, and he was the lookout, and it was his job to warn the Asgardians of any impending danger if he ever saw it coming. That's why he's usually depicted with a large horn, and he was to sound the horn anytime he sensed danger. So yes, so when Ragnarok happens, he's supposed to sound his large horn and call everybody to battle. So now the person for Heimdall is we need to choose a person who is knowledgeable, is very knowledgeable, even more knowledgeable than they appear to be. Somebody who knows something that they're not telling, the main character or the audience. And so for that, I chose Albus Dumbledore from the Harry Potter series because he always knew more than he was letting on. I mean, he only let Harry know what he thought he needed to know, and later on we find out a lot of other things, like Harry was supposed to die from the beginning. A little spoilers here, but yes, Dumbledore is the person I choose for this because he always knows more than he's letting on, and therefore he is my Heimdall. Vidar, a very fierce warrior and an Asgardian god that you don't hear very much about, but there is one very important element to him. Vidar and his sons are the only ones who are apparently meant to survive Ragnarok. Yes, Vidar is... all the Asgardian gods die except Vidar. He actually makes it out. Him and his sons, apparently. And Vidar also is the one who slays the Fenris wolf, the wolf that kills Odin that we talked about earlier. But yeah, Vidar actually survives Ragnarok. So for this character, we need somebody who you're either glad survived their series, you're very happy about them surviving the series, or somebody that you hope survives a series that hasn't finished yet. And for this, some people might, say, oh, here we go again, talking about her again. Yes, Daenerys Targaryen. Yes, she is the one person I really want to survive the Song of Ice and Fire series. I mean, Tyrion can die if he must. Jon Snow can die if that's really necessary. Jaime, Arya, anybody else. But Daenerys, no. No can kill off Daenerys, yes. Hopefully George R. R. Martin will not see this and say, yeah, I'll show you, you old prick. No, but in all seriousness, yes, I hope Daenerys does survive the upcoming apocalypse of Song of Ice and Fire, so she is my Vidar. So as I mentioned before, Balder is the son of Odin and Frigga. And yes, he was the one who tragically died long before Ragnarok happens, and his death is eventually what leads to Loki being imprisoned. And when Loki is imprisoned, when he breaks out of the prison, I should say, that's one of the events that starts Ragnarok. But for a Balder, we need somebody who tragically died in a series and that you are very unhappy about or just dissatisfied about, and possibly don't think actually need to occur. So, without being too spoilery, I'm not going to say who it actually is, but I'm going to, yes, show the book I am talking about. Yes, so those of you who have read the Hunger Games series, I mean, a lot of people died in that, but I think you know the one death that I'm talking about, and I really don't think that was necessary. I mean, I don't mind killing off main characters if there's a deeper meaning to it, but this death, it just really didn't seem necessary. So, yeah. I'm not going to say who it is again. Don't want to spoil the movie for people who haven't seen the movie yet. For those of you who have read all the books, have read Mockingjay, I think you know who I'm talking about. So yes, she is my Balder. And so that was my Gods of Asgard book tag. Hope you enjoyed that. And in the closing credits, I'll reveal who I tagged to do this video. And I basically chose these people based on, I thought they would find out, I thought that once they found out that I tagged them, they wouldn't look at it and say, well, who the hell's that? You know. So you'll see their names in just a short moment here. I will be contacting them, letting them know. If you have any other questions, comments, concerns, you know, down below. And my pertinent contact information is down below in the abyss as always. And please comment, rate, subscribe. You know the drill. And until next time, this is I.S. Anderson telling everybody, make your lives grand and have a good day. Thank you very much.